Hello, good evening, and thank you for everyone who's joined us today. This is the second Zoom webinar hosted by Newham Council for Islamophobia Awareness Month 2020, and we're holding a series of online events as part of Islamophobia Awareness Month. This event is a chance for inspirational Muslim women who have made positive contributions in the United Kingdom to talk about their experiences. They will talk about their experiences as Muslim women in the workplace, the barriers they have faced, and stereotypes of Muslim women in today's society. They will share their stories of how they overcame barriers they faced and aim to encourage women to aspire to leadership roles. Okay, so just some housekeeping rules for this evening. You'll notice that you'll automatically be muted and your videos are off because this is a webinar rather than a meeting. The webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded to our website so that you can see what's happened and you can share it with your friends and colleagues. If you note at the bottom, there's a Q&A button where you can type your questions and they'll be answered at the end. Hopefully we'll have time to do all of them, but if not, we'll try to do as many as we can. And that'll be at the end of the meeting. And just so you know, this is all live, so there may be technical hitches, so please be patient with us. Okay, I'd just like to introduce our co-host.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Geeta and I am Newham's Children and Young People's Commissioner. And my role is very much about making the borough the best place for children and young people. And as part of that, I'm really, really privileged to be able to co-host this evening's event. It's an event that for me is something very personal. I think it's really important that we fully understand that our individual and our collective experiences of hate are real and really do impact on us and each other and our communities in very different ways, but very deeply. Inequality sadly still exists. And tonight is very much about us sharing the contributions that Muslim women have made to society. And I really am very, very pleased to be able to introduce a number of inspirational women tonight. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. I'll just share a short thing for myself. When people ask me who inspires me, I always say my mum. She's a woman who has inner and outer strength. When you hear and I hear about her life journey and see what she's achieved, she is and has inspired me to be who I am today. So you never know who you are inspiring. We can and we do inspire everyone and others around us. So here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, and may we raise them. So thank you very much, and please do enjoy this evening's event. I will hand back to Councillor Charlene McLean. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. So we have 4 speakers this evening. Akeela Ahmed, MBE, Zainab Alema, Shereen Williams, MBE, and Nadia Ali. So our first speaker is Akeela Ahmed, MBE, who's an equalities activist and campaigner. Akeela? Brilliant, thank you.
Hi everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation to attend today's webinar. I'm really honoured to be among such inspiring and amazing women. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of my experiences in the workplace as a Muslim woman who wears a headscarf. And then I'll just talk a bit about how I've overcome some of the barriers I faced. So I wanted to kind of begin with a bit of a sad story, actually. When I was 4 years old, I experienced a really horrible racist incident. My parents ran a cafe in North London, and they were attacked by people from Combat 18. And it was quite a horrific sort of incident to remember. And that really shaped my identity, I think, throughout my life. And it's what really drove me to become an equalities campaigner, that sort of experience of racism. Thankfully, everybody was okay. Nobody was hurt, but it was a horrible experience. And I was 4 years old and I remember it in some detail. And I remember having to hide from these racists who were attacking my parents' place of work. Fast forward to when I was at university, I studied physics, which is quite unusual in of itself for a Muslim woman to study, to study STEM. but I was really passionate about it. But when I was studying physics, I did end up finding that I met a lot of stereotypes, a lot of stereotyping against myself. So, you know, there was people who would say to me, I only got my place because I'm Muslim or because I'm a girl. And that was kind of difficult to deal with because there was nobody else who looked like me when I was at university in terms of, you know, a mentor that I could look up to, you know, other women of color. And that kind of sowed the seed for what I really call imposter, or what we all know of, but what I call imposter syndrome that I kind of started to deal with or face, and I faced throughout my career. So that's kind of why I mentioned it. Anyway, fast forward a bit more, you know, while I was at university, I felt like studying physics and doing research wasn't really what I was passionate about. I was really passionate about equalities and helping people and campaigning. And so I started working with vulnerable people who were homeless, either because they were sort of newly arrived or they were, you know, just people who had kind of fallen on hard times. And I then started to take an interest in mental health. And so I then did a master's in mental health studies to really gain some insight and understanding into how I can help people who have got mental health problems. This then led me to become a chief executive of a young people's charity known as a Muslim Youth Helpline. And that was an amazing experience. We had some really difficult and challenging calls that would come through, but it was really rewarding knowing that we were able to run a helpline service that could give non-judgmental and emotional and support to young Muslims all around the country. And it was really through that work that then I basically started to, I think, find my sort of feet, if you like, and my confidence, even though I had kind of been working in mental health for about 10 years or so. So in terms of what it's like to be a Muslim woman in the workplace, I found that you know, often when I was before I started at the Muslim Youth Helpline, I was often in spaces where either I was the only kind of woman of color, or I was definitely the only woman who was wearing a headscarf. And at the time, I didn't realize, but it does sort of create a barrier. I kind of felt like I was a little bit different. And that can be challenging to deal with. And, you know, I think looking back, I would have really benefited from a mentor. I didn't have a mentor at the time. So I just kind of had to learn things off the hoof. And it did sometimes impact on my self-esteem and confidence, but I had a really supportive family who always encouraged me. And so I learned that basically by, you know, being who I am, by being confident in who I am, by kind of, you know, working hard and being true to kind of my passions, that actually people soon kind of overcome whatever maybe stereotypes and things they had. And my kind of my track record spoke for itself. And now just kind of moving forward a little bit in my career, after I left the Muslim Youth Helpline, I decided to take the plunge and start my own business. And I think that can be very scary. I decided to start a business to provide accommodation for people with mental health problems, people who are homeless. And it was scary in the sense that I didn't have that kind of support of an organization or whatever behind me. I was really kind of going out on my own. But this is when I really tapped into the kind of networks I built up over the years. And I tapped into, you know, other women who were similar to me and, you know, sought out advice. And that really, really helped. And that helped me grow in terms of confidence as well. So I've mentioned that I'm, you know, very passionate about equalities, and I have been for a long time. And I think, you know, working with the Muslim Youth Helpline really opened my eyes even further to the challenges that specifically Muslim women were facing, but they are really common with, you know, women of, you know, color, with minority women. And so that led me to start campaigning on gender inequality. So one of the kind of issues I did face whilst I was working there was that I found that even though I was in this kind of setting where people kind of looked like me and were similar to me, I did find there were barriers in terms of gender stereotypes, and that was quite difficult to deal with at times. But, you know, having, again, you know, supportive colleagues, getting advice, that really helped work through those things. And I think, you know, one thing that I really learned from that time was to go and get advice and support, because I think, you know, there's a real sisterhood out there, and tapping into that is just so important. When Trump was elected in 2016, I think that was a real wake-up call for many of us, and I was really just quite sort of despondent actually at the state of the world. We'd seen a lot of hate crime rise as well following Brexit, because Brexit had acted as a catalyst. So I then linked up with the women who were organising the Women's March in London, and they asked me to give a talk at the rally they were holding when all the women's marches around the world were holding rallies on the 20th of January 2017. And that was one of the scariest things I'd ever done. I spoke to a crowd of about 100,000 people. And that was, you know, was very, very scary, but it was phenomenal. I'd never felt so empowered. And, you know, I kind of really sort of told myself, don't think about it, until I got there, and I couldn't see the back of the crowd, but then I just gave it my all. And I think, you know, again, that was a real learning for me, that sometimes you've just got to kind of grab opportunities as they come along and then just sort of do them, even no matter how scary they are. And, you know, at that point, I really felt, when I was giving that speech, I really felt empowered, because I had never kind of felt that much kind of solidarity, you know, for, you know, the first time I was seeing, you know, a whole sea of people who was from so many different backgrounds, but we all had this commonality, and that was really inspiring, and it was amazing. And then, you know, being involved with Women's March London led me to kind of receive some accolades and things. And in 2018, I received an MBE for services to Muslim women, which I was really proud of. So I've worked at the Muslim Youth Helpline with Muslim women. I'd also set up a project called She Speaks, We Hear, which I haven't mentioned so far, but that is an online space to provide a space for women's voices, but a focus on Muslim women, and a space which is for women to be heard in their own voices, with no kind of agenda. There's no kind of filter or editing or anything like that. And that's really to bridge the gap between, you know, women who aren't heard and then the rest of society, whether it's media or policymakers. And so that's also been, you know, an amazing sort of achievement, I think, not just for me to receive the MBE for my work with Muslim women, but also for women. I really felt it was an honor for women, you know, Muslim women, all the Muslim women that I'd worked with, and Muslim women around the country, and women everywhere, actually, that if somebody like me could, you know, who'd kind of come from this kind of background of, you know, dealing with racism when I was 4 years old, you know, then receive that kind of validation, I thought was really amazing. I'm very conscious I've only got about 24 seconds left according to my timer. So hopefully, you know, during the Q&A, please feel free to ask me more about some of the work I do and some of the other barriers and things I faced and how I've overcome them. But I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for sharing your journey. And there's a lot to take away from that and your experience, and really fantastic validation. So congratulations on that. Thank you. So I'm very proud and pleased to now introduce our next speaker, who is Zainab Alema. And I'm not going to say much about Zainab's journey because she's going to tell it better than I can. But what I would like to say is that Zainab has been nominated for the Vitality Grassroots Sportswoman of the Year Award. And if you could all vote for her, and we'll try and put a link in somewhere, please do. So Zainab, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. I just want to say thank you for everyone in this webinar. It's an honor to be a guest panelist, and thank you for having me. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. So my name is Zainab Alema. I'm a neonatal nurse by profession, and I'm a rugby player by passion. I've been playing rugby for about over 10 years now. And on my nickname is the Bulldozer, and I think I'll get into that as to why I coined that nickname. But just to talk to you about how I got into rugby. So I started in secondary school. We had a PE session. My PE teacher was like, right, girls, we're going to play rugby today. And everyone else was like, what? And I was like, yeah, bring it on. So we had a PE session. I was in my element, running with the ball, smashing into people. Everyone just didn't want to get dirty, but I loved it. So that was my first introduction. And then I did A-level, I did physical education, I did philosophy and ethics. So with my with my PE A-level, I had to do a physical component to go with my theory. So my PE teacher said to me, what sport do you want to play? And I said, do you know what, let me try rugby, because I remember that PE session vividly, I absolutely enjoyed it. So she went out of her way to speak to the head teacher and got me my first membership to my first club. This was at the age of 17. That's where it really began, and I absolutely loved the sport, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that I'd get the ball and run, and I was quite quick in my early days. So I'll talk to you about the struggles I went through. So I think in the beginning, I was very naive. I knew I loved rugby and absolutely loved the sport. But when I went to university, I think that's where I really understood the space I was in. So people know rugby to be a white, middle-class, elitist, upper-class sport. And me being an ethnic minority, being a Black woman, a Muslim woman, a female as well in a male-dominated sport, it was a bit unusual. So at university, the challenges I faced was looking different. So on the rugby pitch, I was often the only Black girl. On my team, I was the only Black girl, and seeing, you know, always that played in my mind a lot, being the only one. It just made me think, am I meant to be here? Is this space for me? Am I meant to play rugby? And not just from a Muslim perspective, also being Black, I didn't see any Black people. So from all angles, I was pretty much isolated. And things like drinking. So I don't know if many of you know about rugby. Rugby has a really heavy drink culture. Everything's like lads go to the bar, have a pint of lager, beer, whatever it is. And I had to sort of, I was put in awkward situations where after a match, so we do this thing in the rugby, if you win woman of the match, you dine a pint, right? And I used to win that quite often back in university. And I would be asked to dine a pint, and I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. So I'd have to then nominate someone else to do it. And even that was really awkward. And I used to just remember feeling like the ground should just open and sink me in, because it was just very awkward and almost embarrassing, if you like. And people do say, like, I didn't actually speak up then, because I thought, if I admit to people that I don't drink, people are gonna, especially university, people are gonna think you're weird because everyone drinks. And then on top of that, I already felt isolated. For me to actually mention something would sort of make me feel even more isolated. That was sort of the things that were going through my mind. And then obviously wearing the hijab, going out to play, it would be literally sweltering in the summertime, and I'm wearing my underlayers covered, and my teammates will have like their nice legs out, you know. So all of that being different really played in my mind in the sport. But I absolutely loved the game, so I still persisted. There was one moment where I was actually going to leave the game, because I thought, you know what, right, I don't see anyone that looked like me. There's no Black people, there's no Muslim people. What am I doing here, right? And I thought, you know what, let me just see if rugby allows women to wear hijab. I didn't actually know, right? All this was new to me. I was really navigating my own way, because I didn't have any role models to look up to. There's only one person called Maggie Alfonsi, who was a Black female rugby player who I absolutely look up to. But there was no like Muslim women, you know? So I went into the rules and regulation of rugby, and I saw in black and white that for religious purposes, or you could actually don a headscarf to play rugby. And I thought, you know what, this means I can actually practice my faith and be a part of the team. Even though I feel isolated, this is black and white rugby rules telling me that I can wear a headscarf and play the sport. And I think that really was a pivotal point in my rugby journey, because it made me feel welcome. That was rugby telling me, okay, Zainab, you feel isolated, but you do belong. We allow you to wear the headscarf. And I know that other sports, especially at that time, they were still going back and forth as to where the players can actually wear the headscarf. So I was quite happy that rugby acknowledged that. So that was sort of my struggles that I went through. And then moving on, so I studied nursing in university. So I qualified as a children's nurse, and I went into neonatal nursing. And I thought, rugby, I'm missing rugby. So I joined my local club down in East London. I used to live in East London, so I joined Millwall Rugby. And I think my rugby journey it's just been amazing, just being vocal and being, you know, being present on social media, telling people I play rugby. And I've noticed a lot of Black Asians, Black and ethnic minorities have actually reached out to me and be like, wow, this is amazing, or like, oh, do you know what, I want to try rugby. So I'm hoping that I'm inspiring people to pick up the sport. And I'll go back to why I was called the bulldozer. So it sounds cocky, but I just look at it from a different way. So how I got that name actually is not exciting. So I play number 8. So number 8 sits at the back of the scrum. If you see in rugby, there's 2 teams that go. That's what everyone knows about rugby. They know the scrum. So I sit at the back of the scrum for my team, right? That's the way the number 8 sits. And the name bulldozer was the name for a play that we did. So it was me picking up the ball at the base of the scrum and running straight into number 10. That was called bulldozer. It's not because I was smashing into people, even though I was. So I look at it from an angle. So a bulldozer, what is a bulldozer? A bulldozer is a construction equipment, something that smashes things, something that demolishes things, right? So for me, being a Black, Muslim, female, rugby player, I feel like I'm smashing stereotypes. So that's how I see the name. Like, I don't see it in a cocky way and, you know, I'm better than anyone else. No, I see it as a metaphor for who I am and what I'm doing. And so apart from that, I actually own 2 projects. So a founder of Studs in the Mud, which is a rugby project that is aimed at using rugby to change people's life for the better. So I launched it in Ghana, which is my heritage. So it's providing kit, equipment, anything that the basic necessities that people need to play rugby, and just giving it to communities. And I target areas that rugby isn't common in, because rugby comes with its values, sportsmanship, respect, discipline. And if you can give a child or a woman those values, it can translate into other aspects of life, whether it's they want to look for a job or they want to network with people. So it's like giving rugby to people to help impact or positive change. And a lot of the work that I do is to give them equipment. So a lot of these kids, women that play in these countries play rugby in barefoot, in sandals. They don't have the correct equipment. So part of my work is sending them these goods. And then my other project is called Muslimah Rugby, which pretty much speaks for itself. So it's Muslim women in rugby, and it's about how it's stemmed from my own personal experience, being all the things that I told you about drinking and not drinking, if anything, and feeling a bit left out. So I create a safe space for Muslim women within rugby, acknowledging that these challenges are there, but as long as we have a community of us and we have a safe space, you're not alone. You know, I don't want people, any Muslim women or any ethnic minority, to even go through the experience I went through, feeling like they were isolated, no role models, no one to look up to. So it's about creating a safe space for them, and also being an information hub for other rugby clubs to come to us. Okay, right, we've got a Muslim woman in our that's turned up our team that wants to play. What can we do to facilitate her? What can we do to make her feel comfortable? So it's about giving that information as well. And I'm a mum of 3. I've got 3 kids under 5, so pretty much hectic. And for me, I'll just leave on this. Rugby is, for me, reminded me who I was. As a mother of 3, I often, got lost in the identity of being a mother, with the feeding, with the clothing, with everything else that comes in motherhood. I almost forgot who I was. And rugby gave me that identity, made me remember who that Zainab was before I had children. I was the bulldozer. I was smashing people on the pitch. I was running. I was being, happy with my teammates. So rugby for me reminded me who I was. That's why I absolutely love it. And I'd love to see more Muslim women, more Asian, more ethnic minorities in the sport. Because there's not, in the women's team, there's not that many, especially for England. We're quite few and far in between. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is just trying to push that representation there, because it's so important. So lastly, I'll probably leave on the fact that, so I mentioned that I'm nominated for the Sunday Times Grassroots Sportsman of the Year, which I'm absolutely ecstatic to even be nominated for. And it's through the work that I've done with my Studs in the Mud and Muslimah Rugby, and it's been recognised, and so they want to give me an award for it. So it's about getting votes and hoping I get the award. So if you could please vote for me, I'd absolutely love that. But thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed listening to my story, and any questions, please put through and I can answer them. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Zainab. That was really amazing. My cheeks are hurting We've been smiling so much listening to your story. So if you look in the in the chat, I believe that the link is there. So if you can all vote for Zainab, that would be wonderful. Don't forget, everybody, put any questions that you have for the panelists in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screens, and we will be taking those at the end of the listening to all the panelists. So next, we have Shereen Williams, MBE, who is the CEO of the Local Democracy and Boundary Commission for Wales. Over to you, Shereen.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm assuming you guys can see me and it's all clear. I've already opened up the link to vote for Zainab. As soon as this event ends, I hope everyone goes over and gives her the votes for her. As it was mentioned, I head up the Local Democracy and Boundary Commission for Wales. Our body is responsible for electoral arrangements for local authorities, and I also head up the Boundary Commission for Wales. So we are responsible for setting up the parliamentary constituencies for MPs in Wales, and there's one in each country, in England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and in Wales. And I was just joking earlier when the panelists met up, I think I might be the only one who's not in lockdown. We had our lockdown end last Sunday. So whilst it's not free and easy over here, it does feel good being able to access the office and travel out and about a bit. Just to give a bit of background about myself, I am originally from Singapore. I was born and brought up there. My parents are Singaporeans, who are Malay by ethnicity, Muslim by faith. And for those of you who are not very familiar with Singapore, it's a very multicultural country. It's in Southeast Asia, so it's got some of the conservatism of Southeast Asia, but it's also quite a liberal and developed nation. I was brought up in a very middle-class family, and it's quite embarrassing, but I was brought up in quite a bubble. There's issues with things like racism, structural inequality, poverty, etc. in Singapore, but I have to admit that I was very much protected. And one of the things that they teach you in schools, and one of the things that the government tells you in Singapore, that if you work really, really hard, you'll make it, and that meritocracy is a real thing, etc. And I grew up believing that was true. So I thought, okay, I didn't think about the fact that I came from a middle-class family. So I had things like tutors, and I didn't have to make difficult choices, etc., because my family could afford to do so. So I think till I was about 20, 21, that was what I had been brought up with. So my values were quite different back then. Even my approach to things like criminal justice and capital punishment, it was very, very different to who I am today. I traveled to Europe when I was in my early 20s for an exchange program. And when I visited Wales to visit a relative, I bumped into a Welshman. 11 months later, we were married. It was quite the whirlwind romance. He proposed after a couple of weeks. I said yes. So it was all very, very interesting. 11 months later, I moved to Wales. After we got married, I moved to Wales. And I think the first week I was here, I got spat on in a racist attack. And for the first time in my very, very sheltered life, I realized that, my skin color, my faith sets me, does set me up to be, and that people don't, not everyone likes us because we're different. And I became really, really aware. I think that was the first time I became really acutely aware of who I was and how my skin color, my faith does affect the way people look at me. So despite my background in accountancy, having moved here, I didn't go into accounting. I actually really, really don't like accounting. Don't tell my mum, she's an accountant. I chose accountancy because my mother was accountant. See, that's how sort of my life was set out. So I thought I had some math skills. So I volunteered for a BME youth organization in Swansea. And then I realized that I really, really enjoyed working in the field of social justice and getting involved with supporting young people. And that sort of set up my journey into working for the third sector. And after about 4 or 5 years, I had my first child and I moved on to work in local government. Now, when you work in the third sector, sometimes you see local government and you think, oh, that's where you've got to be because that's the people who can influence change and they make funding decisions, etc. So I got really excited joining local government, thinking I could create a lot of change. And I think I need to put in some context. Wales, obviously, we are way behind compared to England. And if you focus down into into London, we're even further behind when it comes to racial equality, when it comes to tackling discrimination. We are way behind the curve. I joined local government, and one of the things that I think happens to a lot of women of color, men of color, people from minority faith backgrounds, is that you become the go-to person for everybody. So even though my work was in the corporate services under doing equalities, cohesion, migration, etc., I would be dragged into meetings with colleagues in social services, in those who were dealing with activities for older people, etc., just being pulled in all directions because they didn't have enough people of color working in the organization. It wasn't reflective of the community that we were serving in Newport. And I think that's a very slippery slope for a lot of us who work in these organizations, that you become the go-to person, and that's how you're always seen in that light. And I think it really came to a head for me was when you guys remember, I'm sure you all remember, when Nadia was in the Great British Bake Off. I went into, there's an office in the building that I worked in, and that's where all the heads of services worked. So I had to pop in to go and see my head of service, and there was another head of service there. As I was chatting to her, he turned to me and he says, I was watching Great British Bake Off last night, and I told my wife that it was you. And I said to her, oh, she works on Newport Council. And I stood there and I thought, I'm sorry. And he says, yeah, yeah, you look exactly like her. And I looked at him and I said, why? Because all of us brown women look alike? And he looked a bit shocked then. And I thought he'd drop it, but he didn't. And he turned to me and said, oh, are you guys related then? And I just stood there thinking, I've been here for 8-9 years now, and this is still sort of the pushback that I'm getting. It may not seem, it's not, outright racism or Islamophobia, but it's the fact that people didn't think there was anything wrong with saying something like that. Really, really shocking. And I just thought, okay. And it just really, really surprised me. And I'm thinking, I've been doing this work and I've been in this field for almost 10 years now. It's time for a change. And that's when I realized, that's when I applied for the role of to head up the Boundary Commission, and I shocked myself when I was offered the role and I went for it. But even then, that's opened up a completely different can of worms, going into the other side of public sector, where it's public bodies. Last year, we had a public services summit in Wales, where all the chief execs and chairs of public bodies were invited to this big meeting in Swansea. So there was about 200 of us in that room. And surprise, surprise, over 2 days, there was only 2 people who were visible people of color. It was myself, who was an attendee, so in my capacity as chief exec, and the other person who attended, he was a presenter. And, and I sat there thinking, it's 2019. It shouldn't be this hard to find somebody in a room of leaders in Wales who looks similar to me that I can connect with. There was none of that. And when we had a public leaders forum meeting, a very, very senior public sector Welsh government official stood up and said that when she meets with her counterparts in London, so she meets the heads of the civil service in England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, she always says that, oh, things aren't that bad here in Wales. And again, I'm in a room full of other leaders, all from white Welsh backgrounds, white English backgrounds, white British backgrounds. And I couldn't help myself. I stood up and I said, I'm sorry, it might be better for you, but it's not for me. I'm at a point of saying that actually when I work in Cardiff, and every day when I go out to get my lunch, I walk out assuming somebody's going to hit me. And I live my life that way, walking out and living my everyday life thinking when I go out in public, somebody might not like the way I look. Somebody might not like the fact that I've got a turban, or I just look different, or I may have offended somebody unknowingly just because of who I am. And they think it's perfectly acceptable to hit me on my head or punch me or spit at me. And I think that's some of the challenges that women of color, people of color have to deal with. Racism, Islamophobia, there's a lot of intersectionality that's not being looked at. It's just, there's lots of silo working. And I think from somebody in public services, somebody who's living a public life here in Wales, I think there's more that needs to be done and can be done. I am happy to take questions later because I know I want to give enough time for the other great panelists to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shereen. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you very much for sharing your challenges. And I think, you know, those of us in local government, we certainly do need to do more, and we need to do more everywhere because we haven't got it right, whether it's in Wales or in London. So thank you very much for that. So it's with great pleasure I'm now going to introduce our final speaker for this evening, Nadia Ali. Now, Nadia is going to obviously share her journey with you, but I did just want to say that Nadia has her own award-winning radio show on BBC Asian Network every Sunday. So if those of you haven't logged in and listened to Nadia, I certainly have, and I think it's a very amazing show, and she has been recognised for a number of awards for her work in radio, in music, and of course in other areas of her life. So over to Nadia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Geeta, for that wonderful introduction. Wow, I mean, firstly, I just want to say I feel totally humbled to be a part of this panel today, because the women that are speaking just full of, I mean, you know, inspiration, and you know, they just have so much talent, and it's great to see Muslim women around the world doing well and actually having that time to come on and speak to others to inspire them. And I love the unity that Newham Council have actually made this happen. Like this whole this event today, especially during the pandemic. You know, when you think things couldn't, you know, I mean, you know, we've got a second lockdown, you know, what do we do? And, you know, the fact that you can come up with something like this and unite us all and inspire us all, I think that's great. So well done to Newham Council, and thank you to all the speakers today. So my name is Nadia Ali. I work for the BBC Asian Network. I have my own radio show, award-winning radio show, as Geeta mentioned, every Sunday, 7 till 9 p.m. And I basically love playing Bangla music. And this is something that I'm going to touch on a bit later on. But before I get to that, let me give you some history about myself and how I got to where I am today. And I've still got a long way to go, but I'm just going to give you a bit of history. So I was born and bred here in the UK, in Ilford. My grandparents were in Tower Hamlets. I grew up in Tower Hamlets in East London. And you know, I grew up in a very sheltered environment from a conservatively Muslim family. So I had to follow the footsteps of my family. So I come from a background where my mum's side of the family are all doctors. My granddad was a councillor, the first elected Bangladeshi councillor in Tower Hamlets. Let me just put that in there. And this is during the 70s, 80s, where you know, racism was very high. So my granddad was actually a twice elected councillor in Tower Hamlets, the first. And, you know, I grew up around that. My granddad was also a barrister. So, you know, I had to follow that route because, you know, my mum was like, nope, you need to study. You either be a doctor or you be a lawyer or you be an accountant, you know, the typical route. So luckily for me, I love talking and I love arguing. So for me, the bar route was the way to go forward. And whilst I was doing that, I realized that I had a passion for the media industry as well. And I really wanted to be a presenter. But at that time, when I started, this is like 15 years ago, there weren't many British Bangladeshi girls in the media scene. And luckily at that time, we had a community channel called Channel S that had just come out. So, you know, I had to really ask my mum, and I was like, look, mum, you know, what do you think? And I had an uncle who was in that scene, took me there. I did an audition and I got my first gig. I was then a presenter for a kids program and I did that for like 7 years. And actually, when I started doing that, my mum and my dad were very supportive, but my grandparents weren't as supportive. And this could be because, you know, I mean, back in the days, it was a bit different. So my granddad wasn't very happy with that. And he was like, no, you're going to face racism. You know, you're a girl of color. You're not going to get any opportunities. You know, he was really pessimistic about the whole situation. But my mum supported me, and I went ahead and I pursued that career and I pursued that dream whilst I was studying to become a lawyer. At the same time, once I finished my law degree, I then became one of the youngest bank managers in the UK. I had 3 months available in between before my, after my law degree to join the bar. So I thought I'd look for a part-time job, but somehow I landed myself a bank manager role, which I then took a career break from my bar and decided to pursue that career. And that is actually where I felt the ageist and the gender inequality, because, you know, I was 21, 22, and here I am, a manager of a bank. And, you know, there were so many challenges I had to face. And some of them being, you know, just being a British Asian girl and a young girl, suddenly taking charge of this bank and employees that were working since they, you know, they were, I don't know, they've been there for about 30 years, maybe 15, 20 years. And then you've got this newbie who's now suddenly fresh blood telling you, okay, you can't do it like this. We need to do that. We need to do this for the customers. So I felt that was very, very challenging, where people were talking down to me. And at the same time, I was learning to be a leader at 22. You know, this is my first ever job straight after uni. This was a huge thing. This was in 2008. So I remember I had to work super hard, and I had to really realize that you know, I have to learn to adapt to everyone around me, and I need to teach others about, you know, even though I'm young, it doesn't mean I have the ability to be a leader. And I found that quite challenging. And after I think about 2-3 years, I won an award for being one of the best leaders in my area. So that was amazing, and that made me feel very happy to know that, you know, if you have a dream, if you work super hard, and don't let these barriers get to you, just go through those barriers. And I did, and that's exactly what I did. If there was a block, I'd break through that block, and I'd go as fast as I could, and I did it with sweetness. I didn't get upset. I tried not to get upset. There were times I did, you know, I'd cry to my mum, but you know, I still overcame those, and I thought, nope, I need to do this. Then came my next big challenge, which was to become a barrister. And oh my God, that was probably the hardest ever, because I got into bar school. I came from East London University, which wasn't the top university, because my group of classmates were all Oxbridge students. And here I was from East London University, wanting to do the bar and wanting to be a qualified barrister and actually practice. And, you know, and there were times where even the tutors, when I say, you know, where are you from? East London University, and they'd be like, oh, okay, where are you from? Oxford? Or, you know, are you from Cambridge? And, you know, it was so horrible that every time I'd go for these meetings, and they just assume that you're an Oxbridge student. And I found that really, really horrible. And that soon I thought had to change. And what I then started doing was going to every event, mingling with people. And another thing that I think it was Zainab that mentioned, you know, in the rugby field, you know, drinking is a really big thing. And actually in the bar, some would say it's like dating, because you've got to go on dinners, you need to meet people, you need to network constantly. And, you know, being a Muslim girl, now I'm a bit different to the other speakers. I don't wear a hijab, but I'm a Muslim woman. I pray 5 times a day. I fast. I have my belief. I consider myself as a strong believer of Islam, and that I found like it was a big barrier for me, because every time I'd go to these meetings, you know, whether it's in the media industry or in the bar, I would always get told, oh, you don't drink? You don't know? No, I don't drink, I'm Muslim. Oh, you're Muslim? Yeah, I'm Muslim. I just don't wear a hijab and I just don't drink, but I can still have fun. And, you know, that for me was a really big eye-opener, that people really see you differently as soon as they know, okay, you know, she's not going to drink, but, you know, she doesn't wear a hijab, but, you know, and you just feel that emptiness straight away, that barrier straight away. But I didn't give up. I still kept going. I still kept pursuing my dream. I then qualified as a barrister, and then I got my gig at the BBC Asian Network. I know I'm running out of time. I can talk for ages. I'll take 1 more minute. But then I joined the Asian Network, and that was a big thing for me. You know, I was one of the one of the only Bengali presenters on BBC Asia Network for a very long time. And the big thing for me was the fact that I was, you know, just going with the Bangladeshi flag across the network, across the BBC with my Bengali music, which I don't think was played enough before I started. I mean, now we get my music, Bengali music, played across the network. We've heard it on Radio 5, we've heard it on Radio 4, because I won an award for this when we had Bangladesh Music Week. And I realized that even when I started really pushing for Bangla music, I realized that there was a bit of racism within the Asian community with Bangladeshis. And it was really sad that there was this block, that there wasn't enough Bangladeshi, British Asian artists, or even international artists. You know, Bollywood's played everywhere. Why is Bangladeshi music not played everywhere? So that was my mission, and that's what I bring to my show, and that's what I've done over the years, where I've put forward artists, I've put forward Bangla music on the main platform and said, well, actually, here you have it. It doesn't matter where you're from. Music is music. You know, human beings are human beings, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Sikh, whether you're Hindu, it doesn't matter. We're all talented and we all deserve a fair chance. So I'm going to end with just saying, whatever your dreams are and whatever it is you want to do, just believe in yourself and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And, you know, be proud of what you are and who you are, how you look. Just carry on fighting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nadia. Thank you very much for that. And I think, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? The things that unite us, music is certainly one of those things. And the challenges that all the speakers have spoken about have in some way shaped who you are. And I think it's still very sad, isn't it, to think that the stereotypes, the ways in which you have all described that you've had to navigate to try and be seen and heard are still happening today. So we're into Q&A for the last sort of 5 to 8 minutes, if that's okay. And so please do put any questions into the chat if that's okay. But I did just want to come back to each of our speakers. I don't know if you're able to just put your videos on so that we can see you all. Fantastic. And, you know, this is about us being, you know, the inspirational women that you are. And I know that Nadia at the end gave us a sort of inspirational quote. What would you tell others? What's your sort of single message to others who are listening and to everyone about what can be done? What can we do? And just something that you think that we need to take on board and really push hard on. So I'm going to start with Zainab, just because you're unmuted, if that's okay. So Zainab, over to you.
Ready. I think I'd say, if you can't see it, you can't be it. As simple as that. So get out there. Don't let being Muslim or being a person of colour stop you, because you actually being yourself and you going out there and do what you love, you will automatically inspire people without even knowing, without even trying. So just believe in yourself and yeah, get that representation across whatever field you are. Aim to be the best in whatever it is that you like doing. Try and aim to be the best in it.
Fantastic, thank you. Akeela, can I come to you next, please?
Hi, yes, thank you. I would say don't allow the kind of, you know, people's stereotypes or hatred or whatever it is, you know, to become that little voice in your head, because I think I allowed that to happen. So really don't allow that to happen. And just, you know, as much as you can, elevate other people and support them, especially women, because I think that's really, really important as well.
Thank you very much for that. Shereen?
I just want to echo what Akeela said around supporting other women. I cannot emphasize how important it is to bring others with you. Once you've broken through that door and to that barrier, you make space for other people who look like you, who are similar to you, because you know, it's a big deal to be the first one to do something, but it's far more shameful if you're the last one. So bring others with you.
Fantastic, thank you. Nadia, I'm going to come back to you. Thank you.
I think, you know, I'd just say have a dream and just go for it. Don't let anyone hinder those dreams. And I think that's the most important thing. Even family, like I mentioned, and I spoke about my grandparents and how supportive my mum and dad were. You know, there are lots of other things that went on in life, but the one thing that I was strong about was my vision. I knew what I wanted and I just went for it. And networking, sorry, that's another thing I just want to add. Networking is so important, ladies. Please do not feel scared or, you know, worried about approaching people. Approach me, approach the ladies that are here today. And ask for help and, you know, and ask them for guidance. Well, hopefully, I'm sure the ladies will be fine with me saying that. I didn't even ask them. Yeah, I'm always up for that. You know, my Instagram, my Twitter, you know, drop me an email or drop me a DM and I'll do everything I can to support you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. We have got one question, and I don't know if we could just take a little bit of time just to perhaps think about this. So one of the questions is, about a colleague has put on that she can resonate with this as Muslim women who are elected members on local councils and wear hijabs. She's been mixed up and so many people apparently think we all look the same. And she wanted to ask, how do we create better understanding of the Islamic faith and the barriers we face? Yes. So I don't know who wants to perhaps answer that.
Can I go?
Yeah, go Nadia, yes please.
And the only reason is because I actually don't wear a hijab. But like I mentioned, you know, I have strong faith, and even at work, I'll pray. I'll go to a prayer room, and if there's not a prayer room, I'll pray in the, you know, in a room that's vacant. So I think events like this are a great way to just to educate others about Islam and about Muslim women that are doing really well and how we got to where we are. And if you are watching and you're in a workplace where you feel that there isn't enough education around this, be the first to do it. You know, when there's Eid, celebrate Eid, you know, do something, send out emails, just say, hey guys, it's Eid, you know, Eid Mubarak. I mean, I live in an area where I don't have many Asians, but every Ramadan, this was prior to COVID, I would actually give iftari, so whatever we'd eat to break our fast with, I would actually box them up and give it to my neighborhood who are non-Muslims, just to give them an insight of what Ramadan is, which is about giving and sharing. So I think little things like that make a big difference.
Thank you, Nadia. Did anyone else want to come in on that? Shereen?
I'm just, one of the things that I wanted to come in on was actually, there's, you know, sort of a follow-up around, you know, do you feel responsible for representing Islam and Muslims to your work colleagues? And I think when I first started in local government, I felt that pressure because you kept getting pulled and kept getting asked lots of questions. But then I realized that's not my job. My job is to be the best version of me. And I always remind people that Muslim women, we are not a homogenous group. I would never, you know, I'm married to a white Welshman. I will not assume all white Welshmen are like him. So why would you make the assumption about Muslim women? I said, you know, you've got women, you know, who wear hijab, who don't, women from different cultural backgrounds, women who like different things, women who are in different stages of practice. All those things, you know, it's really, and I remind when people say, oh, you know, I wish everyone was like you. I said, well, you know, I wish there was lots of your community, everyone's like you as well, but we can't have that. And you've got to remember, we are all different individuals, and we are more than just being Muslim or being, you know, from a person of color. We've got lots of different identities, and it all merges to this really unique blend. So that's my input on that one.
No, thank you very much for that. And Zainab, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with what's already been said. And I think just being unapologetically yourself, because even through your actions, you can actually tell that people can really get a lot from you. So just, you know, having the best of characters and living your life how you want to, and a lot of non-verbal communication can go a very long way. Just your manners, you know, the way you conduct yourself in public and even in private, all of that can actually educate people without you having actually to say anything. So just carry yourself the way you want and just be respectful all the time. I think that's the best way.
Akeela, I'm going to come to you for the last few minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to say, you know, to completely agree with everything that's been said. And I just wanted to say that over on She Speaks We Hear Instagram page, we've been doing lives with Muslim women from different backgrounds, from different, you know, education, whatever, basically expertise, talking about their lives, talking about their expertise. So we found that's really been helpful in just putting out there to, you know, the rest of the world that Muslim women are diverse, we're not homogenous, we have, you know, nuanced, complex lives, basically, just like any other person. So if anybody's got a chance, and please do go and check those out.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you all very, very much. It's been a really inspiring evening, and you know that your words towards the end there is really what we need to hold on to, because there's more to do. And I think, you know, let's own the space and use our voice and really help others to find their way through their journeys. And obviously you all have very long ways to still go in your journey. So really excited to see what you do next. So thank you all.
Yes, Shereen. Please. I was going to ask Shereen, are you a rugby fan? Because I know you said you're from Wales.
Well, my husband is, and he's absolutely heartbroken. Both our boys play football. I'm sorry.
Sport. So thank you all very much for joining us this evening. I would just like to say a couple of things. Obviously, I think people will be aware, as Councillor McLean said at the start, this is a series of events, and the next event is next week on the 18th. And the event is actually titled, sorry, I'm just, there we are, is Art, Culture and Creativity, Modern Day Muslims. So please do log on to our website, and you'll be able to set up on Eventbrite and join us on that event next week, if that's okay. And I think we've posted into the chat the link for that. And also just wanted to say, of course, for National Interfaith Week, which started on Sunday, and will continue to next Sunday, Newham Council is commissioning a piece of work to explore the faith heritage in Newham and the changing landscape for faith groups. The final presentation will be a mixture of short recorded footage, pictures in historical archives to help explore faith transition and influences on community. So we'll keep you updated on that, but please do look on our Newham website and any social media, and hopefully you'll be able to follow us on those things. So thank you all very much. Thanks again to the panelists. Thank you all for joining us this evening. And I hope you've had a really, I think, a very insightful evening with all of our speakers. Thank you all very much, and hope to see you next week. Have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.